know what other organizations were doing. I wanted to know how what their work is, how their work can help us out here for what we're doing, and the whole goal and the vision is. Um, it was very interesting meeting different types of people because um, just what they had to bring to the table. I had a couple of issues with um, the outcome. I think that it could have, if we had a longer time learning different situations and different organizations, learning more about who they were, I think that I personally could have got more information. Um, Paris, it was different, and when we went to for show, it surprised me to see how close it was to home. The living conditions, the schooling issues, it surprised me how Paris is so, when you think of Paris, you think of something completely different from where you're used to. And it surprised me to learn that people are going through the same things as we are, and the same issues are very similar. Um, and then I learned that where you go, where you are, other people's stories, they're very much like your own. They go through things just like you go through things. So that was a difference. Um, and that changed my mindset. Um, Overall, I think with the actions that we attended, most of the actions were different. I felt like we could have had a broader view on different organizations that were planning the actions. Um, I did see a lot of Parisians that were also on the streets protesting, and their mindset is just like, you know what? There's the red ball, and I'm gonna go get it. I don't care what walls are there. I'm just gonna go get it. So I like that about Paris. But overall, I think that the trip made me realize some things about myself emotionally and mentally, and it made me realize that I do have a voice and that um, I do emotionally see myself caring for what other people's opinions are, especially in the type of work that we do. So it's making me realize that, and then it's a step closer into realizing yourself, because I believe, especially in this movement, you have to understand what you want for yourself. And once you realize that, then you're able to open more doors, especially when you're amongst other people that know exactly what it is that they want. So I think that opened the door for that pedestal. So yeah, thank you. So okay. And then Saki, she's gonna give her personal reflection as well.
And, so I was trying to pause the slideshow because we have members of our contingent that are not able to be here. And I think two people that were really critical were actually two moms. I don't know if I went further back or not. But there they are. And then if you guys see a picture of Vernon, we can pause them on Vernon too. So, so it actually included Brandon, myself, Shay, Elijah, Vernon, who's working right now, who's a member of Corporation Jackson, and then Lorraine and Marie. Kali is also not able to be here because he's taking care of himself and his health. And Lorraine is Kali's mom, and Marie is my mom. My mom's from Haiti. She's a native French Creole speaker and speaks English and Spanish also. And so and who is a social worker by career and deeply cares and is invested in a lot of issues, including environmental justice. And so she was able to come and support us in terms of translation and had offered support to the larger It Takes Roots delegation. And because many of you know that you're around, we have two little ones who are usually even here when we're having these programs. We really wanted to be able to have support with childcare, and Kali's mom was able to do that. And I think that all of us were really only able to go because a lot of people, including people in this room, were generous with donations because we don't have the same kind of resources that a lot of the big green NGOs had to be able to make sure that their interests and their demands and views and the lobbying that they could literally do within the United Nations compound that was there was heard. And so it was really a great effort leading up to even going, because we did everything from a barbecue to a Halloween party, to, you know, like the online campaign and the film screening that some of you were at. And so I think moving into going on the trip was exciting for me. It was a little different for me compared to Elijah or Shay, maybe even Brandon. I've been to two other COPs in my capacity working in a human rights organization. I was at COP17, and then one of the parts of the process that wasn't a COP, but it was a follow-up to Rio, the Rio +20, I was there as well, and that was like a moment in the timeline of people looking towards, you know, a final document resolution, something that could be moved forward in terms of how the world was going to address climate change, right? And what it would be like compared to Kyoto. And there was a lot of ebbs and flows throughout the process. I know some people know, and I'm not even really good with this history, in terms of where things were at in Cancun, how things kind of broke down in Copenhagen. And so the year prior to, we're checking on our comrade Eros in Paris, because even though it's going on 2 o'clock in the morning there, he wants to be here to talk with you also. And so the last year, COP20 in Peru, I was present. And so because I've been kind of on this road of environmental justice, climate justice work, and particularly within a human rights framework, and even more so within an intersectional framework, I felt like I needed to be in Paris, right? This was like the culmination. But because I have been in those different processes, I would probably say that I was not expecting anything to come out of the UN part. But what I was excited about is that throughout the time and the experience when I've been at these places, I've seen increasingly that people are less focused on what's happening on the inside and more focused on the outside and what we need to be doing with each other in order to make and change and shift the world into what we want to see, right? And so, you know, so there was always this balance for groups, especially groups who I think have more progressive or radical inclinations. Do you go on the inside? What's the inside strategy? What's the outside strategy? And I saw a shift to the point of Paris, where I really felt like the focus was being on the outside, calling the COP process, you know, for what it was. You know, one of the actions that I participated in, which really also highlighted the huge police state and the repression that kind of came down after what happened, what was it, several weeks before, was at the Grand Palace. And at the Grand Palace, all these companies were inside being able to display their solutions to climate change, right? And it was literally called COP21 Solutions. And so activists from different parts of the world who actually are being exploited and killed even by these companies, we had a direct action and went inside. We actually like had to pose and pretend like we were just going on the inside, and Brandon got profiled and didn't get let in. A few of us made it in. And so while we're waiting for things to kind of get set off, because what was gonna happen were that different people from these different organizations and communities were gonna go by where the company was and say what their stories were and really expose them. So until that time happened, I kind of like walked around and looked around and took some pictures, and I see Coca-Cola being excited about their recycling program, and and then like I have pictures. There was a scary picture of, I think it was a water company, and it's like stadium seating, and they all have these big like goggles on, because people are wearing the goggles in order to see visually, virtually, like what the program and platform is. So yeah, it was it was disturbing. It was disturbing, and the action that took place was actually, it was named False Solutions. And so one of the people that we are closely associated with, I can't remember Candy's last name, but she's with the Indigenous Environmental Network, got to share the story about what is really happening. And so, of course, at a certain point, there was confrontation, and they didn't want the people there telling their stories. There were some folks from, I think it was Australia, talking about one of the companies that I wasn't really familiar with. So that to me, it felt good. Like, it felt good to be able to be there and confront them. Even though I wasn't there to tell the story and I didn't have that kind of frontline confrontational story, like, it felt good to support that. It felt good to, like, mad dash towards the other end of the palace with my camera to document them dragging a couple of people out. And to me, that's what Paris was meant to be about, because we know and we knew what was going to come out of that larger political body, right? And so, but it still was important to be there, to be able to do just what I described in that action. But then also coming out of Peru and other experiences, and being, because when I first started, I was only on the inside. And then the next role I played, it was half and half. And so increasingly going through and not, not with an organization, but with a grassroots delegation, it's just so amazing what people are doing that they have the history of doing that's sustainable, right? And all of the women who have vision, who are brilliant, who are facing challenges that I don't think we could even necessarily imagine, and the creativity in terms of how they're working together collectively to address it is always inspirational. And so those are the two parts that I was really looking forward to in terms of happening in Paris. So I'm gonna throw it to Brandon if he has anything more that he wants to say, but I wanna mention that I think what I talked about is a good segue into Richard and the AUW and the struggles with Nissan and Renault, because it's a really good example that's connecting local to the global and why we felt it was important to go to Paris. And so Richard's gonna come up, okay, and talk about that. And then I'm gonna check in while Richard is talking to make sure that we can see about getting Eros on the Skype so we can hear a little bit from them. And because when I talked about intersectional, for us, it was also about making sure that people know both our own communities and those who we're up against, that it's not just polar bears and ice caps, and that there's an intersection of gender, there's an intersection of Islamophobia, anti-Black racism, economic rights and justice, like I said. So thanks. No. Yeah, I'm gonna switch.
While we're doing this, I thought maybe introduce two people that one of our people speak. Rickman Jackson is a campaign director on loan from the Service Employees Union and is in Mississippi. He's been here since last spring, helping lead the union effort, and the leader of the union effort. The UAW's director is Sanchione Butler. Why don't you just give a 1 minute update what we're doing this time on the actual campaign at this time?
So I'm not gonna give a too long of a speech, but I think that the team that represented the Nissan campaign and the cause of COP21, Richard is gonna go into a lot of details. It seems like it was very exciting. I know he stayed over there and worked very hard. I didn't get a chance to go. I had an opportunity, but was not able to lead the campaign. Just wanted to share with you guys here. We have a lot of worker interest. People are ready to make some changes in the workspace, and so our campaign is starting to build momentum, and we're very excited about what's happening on the ground. You got it all hooked up, Richard?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
Okay.
Okay. So Nissan has been threatening the workers in Canton since they built the plant here with closing. They do that through a variety of ways, meetings, one-on-ones. And we'd like to go to an election at Nissan, but we're only going to an election if it's a fair election where people can vote without having their job threatened. So there's points of pressure that have been put on Nissan globally and locally. Kali is involved with Mississippi Alliance for Fairness, which is a local clergy community group, which is pressuring Nissan to stop threatening people. It's not allowed. It's one request we have at Nissan: can people vote without threatening? Close it. And so part of the pressure. Sorry. Part of the pressure point here is, oops, hold on. Part of the pressure here is that Renault, the company is really Renault Nissan. It's a French company and a Japanese company combined. It's an alliance. The French state owns a controlling interest of Renault. Renault owns a controlling interest of Nissan. So indirectly, the workers in Canton, or not directly, but indirectly, almost like employees of the French state. French state is a socialist government that's very pro-labor. So we spent the fall with Nissan workers going from Mississippi in October and November to Paris to meet with leaders met with the various leaders and political leaders and the 4 unions that are very powerful within Renault that are in solidarity with us in Mississippi. Those unions in France have been in Mississippi several times, visiting with the Nissan workers, meeting with hundreds of Nissan workers. So this is a very sympathetic member, Houghton, the member of parliament, who told the Nissan workers, that's Lee Ruffin and Linda Brown, who were both off on medical leave for Nissan, and said, don't ever say you work for Nissan, say you work for Renault Nissan. And Renault isn't just a neutral company, it's a pro-union company. We want to be positive in France about the right to organize, not even neutral. All we've asked Nissan here is just to be neutral, stay out of it, let the workers decide. And it shouldn't be an act of courage to vote for a labor union in Mississippi. It should be an act of democracy. So that's been our message. So that guy's great. He wrote a long letter, mailed it out, sent it to every member of the French National Assembly, created quite a stir. They also appeared in Le Monde and all the, well, this is the head of actually he would be like the Speaker of the House, I guess, the whip of the House. He is, Bruno LaRue is the head of the Socialist Party of the National Assembly. He is sort of carrying our torch with a couple other MPs in France and are continuing to try to press the French government to pressure Carlos Ghosn, the CEO, to quit threatening people in Mississippi. This is just, I'm not going to read this, skip over this, but we had a lot of articles that talked about what's going on in the French press, talking what's going on in Mississippi. There's a lot of knowledge in France. I was surprised about Martin Luther King, the history of the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. In some ways, better knowledge than we have in some places in our country. So there are a lot of connections made with the civil rights struggle in Mississippi and with the workers' rights struggle today. So Saki talked about this. This is inside COP Solution, the corporate event down at the Grand Palace that Saki was talking about. This is the biggest exhibit was Renault Nissan, okay? And so their whole thing is they market, Renault Nissan markets themselves as a progressive corporate socially responsible corporation that believes highly in the principles of climate justice and sustainability. when you read their websites, you think they look like a labor union or look like Cooperation Jackson. They have such great rhetoric. So we were there to try to expose that. So there were two events. This is the corporate event downtown. And the other event was also, in my opinion, in many ways a corporate event, which is the main COP21 event with 20,000 people on the outskirts of Paris. Outside COP Solution, this is the second day of leafleting for us. And I came right as, I think Saki and her group had just been on the inside and caused a big ruckus because suddenly I got off the train and you couldn't get anywhere near the Grand Palace, a big demonstration. And there must have literally been 1,000, not 100, but 1,000 police. And so we got some video on the outside. We had some members of the French labor movement leafleting with us. I said, this can't be because of us. What's going on here? Wait, is this really because of us? Then it was you, and then who climbed the flagpole? Did you see that? Well, that was the best. But anyways, I saw the end of that. So that was a courageous person. So we had constant struggles with just getting our literature out in the aftermath of the terrorist attack because here's a police officer reading our flyer. Here's two of them. Every time we went to leaflet, we were surrounded by riot police. And we would explain to them, we're not even protesting. We don't have protesters. It's 3 people, trade unionists from France, and 1 American or whatever. And just please leave us alone. He said, yeah, but you're attacking a company. I said, yeah, we're attacking. We're known this side was one. We're threatening people. We're not protesting. He goes, well, but you're attacking a corporation. That literally is just a conversation we're having. And I said, well, what if we were praising them? Could we leaflet them? Absolutely, because then you wouldn't be protesting. So the French, the COP21 and COP Solutions used the emergency order to guard themselves somewhat. I understand the emergency, but I don't understand how it really applied to us. So our focus, though, wasn't COP Solution. They told us we'd be arrested if we continued the leaflets. That was the end of our leaflet. We did it for 3 days. Every day we were surrounded. And the 4th day, actually a group from Cooperation Jackson was on the way down when our lawyer finally met with us and said, no more, that's it, everybody's gonna be arrested. So we all that was the end of it. It wasn't the focus of why we were there. We wanted to leaflet inside the main COP21 event where the 20,000 people were. So that was our goal. But we weren't allowed to. So this was one of the flyers. That's French. This is English with the civil rights thing. So we know this on threatening Mississippi workers is not sustainable was the messaging of the campaign. We went to the good news is after the UN would not allow us, we were the only group I know of that was not allowed to leaflet inside COP21. They assured us when we met with the United Nations, we had no problem. But we were then denied the right to leaflet inside there because Renault Nissan was the top corporate sponsor of COP21, and they had provided 200 cars for free to travel, electric cars to travel people back and forth. And that's their connection. Renault Nissan, again, is an electric vehicle manufacturer, and that's how they argue their belief in sustainability. This is just some of our slogan. But some of the environmental justice movements came up with an idea of having an unjust transition award. And actually, it was this guy from the president of Sierra Club, Aaron Marr, that's a picture of his father. His father was a lifelong UAW member from Terrytown, New York, worked in a General Motors plant. So he's this guy is involved racial justice, union worker justice. And he decided Sierra Club would sponsor, even though they wouldn't let us leave, but they would sponsor an event the UN had to let them do. So we had an event. These were the big posters, looked like the Nissan workers were lined all outside the event, inside COP21. It wasn't easy getting the posters inside this place. This was the front of the event itself, and some of the panelists. Though it's that's the World Wildlife Federation and the Sierra Club on the right. One of the main speaker was Bob Buller. You might know this guy.
Yes.
A great person. That was his slogan, was talking clean and acting dirty is what Renault Nissan is doing. They talk a good line about the environment. And this was at the end of the ceremony. And I want to just play 2 1-minute videos. That's basically what we were doing. Mainly thing we were doing is leaflet every morning at 6:30. So we got about 10,000 leaflets handed out. The UN didn't like it. I said, you know, there were leaflets everywhere inside COP21, and they accused us of putting them out because we weren't doing it inside. Unless you really search everyone going in, you won't be able to stop people from taking the leaflet inside. But it was kind of an oppressive environment because of the COP21 event. But we had tremendous support from the people there. I mean, really, really. And from I took the cars back and forth to Renault Nissan, and all the drivers were supporting us as well. The Renault Nissan workers were supporting us as well. So here's a couple of just 1-minute videos. Okay, so this is Lauren Wiggins, who's HB, historically Black College and University climate justice activist, speaking at our press event.
Now I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Wiggins, representing the historic Black colleges and universities of the United States.
Bonjour, everyone. My name is Lauren Wiggins. I'm a student at Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee. The youth's vision for a 100% clean world is where clean energy develops alongside increased equity. The current actions of Renault and Nissan do not fit that vision. How can we applaud green industrialization without simultaneous advancements in socioeconomic equity? The Renault and Nissan employees in Tennessee and Mississippi are not given the opportunity to unionize and ensure that the working conditions and compensation are safe and fair for all. This goes directly against what the civil rights movement, which began in the South, actually stood for. So are we to perpetuate the oppression that occurred in the antebellum and Jim Crow era? An even better question is, in this movement to reduce carbon emissions, are we going to leave the people, and more specifically, the marginalized communities who are first affected and worst affected by climate change, behind in this movement? By not allowing these employees to stand up for their rights, we are not inviting justice for the climate, but an injustice for the people. Sadly, Renault Nissan is supporting an unjust culture in the green movement. Clean energy technology is not possible without workers. These workers deserve fair treatment and the option to mobilize in the event that they are not treated with the respect they deserve. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Now we have invited Carlos Ghosn, the CEO of Renault Nissan, to attend today's award ceremony. So Mr. Ghosn, if you're here to receive the award on behalf of Renault Nissan, would you please step forward? Oh, I'm sorry to say, much to our surprise, Mr. Ghosn has not chosen to attend. So instead, what we'll do.
So you got there's a big trophy, and we brought it back to Mississippi at the right moment, really, to present to Mr. Ghosn. And here's the last thing to show is this short video, it's a minute long. We showed this at the press event. We made this while we were at COP21. Great, thank you.
Okay, so now we're getting ready to hear from one of our comrades that reside here. And his name is Eros. Saki is hooking him up now.
So while I get Eris is on Skype, so while I just plug back into the TV and get the call going, maybe Brandon can just say a little bit more about the exchange and socials.
So yeah, I guess so that y'all know, folks from Cooperation Jackson, Kali had been going to Paris a couple of times before the COP21 to do some prepping around like what some of the actions may look like, but also to build with folks locally, just to figure out like kind of what the conditions are people are facing there and how we can be of support while we're in town. And one of the things that we were able to do was to link with Arrows and their crew is called Dip Social Club. And they do a lot of work connecting migrant struggles, refugee struggles in a city that's like right outside of Paris. It's called Charcelles. And that community is super diverse. And they have a history of, I mean, Eros will go into it a bit more, but it's just crazy to kind of hear how poverty and how communities being destabilized actually creates violence and creates tension between communities who were once like neighbors and like loving and like had like really cool relationships. When the beast kind of comes on you, sometimes we end up scrapping each other, and that's kind of what was shown there, and kind of similar to kind of things that happen here. But yeah, so there's Arrows.
I can hear you.
And we're gonna make sure that everyone can hear him too. Hold on a second.
I'm there.
Say something, Eros, so we can see.
Hello, folks.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Great. We just plugged you into the speakers, so everyone can definitely hear you. And I'll turn my screen around. You don't.
No?
I'll turn my screen around so you can see everyone who's here as well.
Great. Hey, Saki.
Like you can even see your butt.
I'm CD. Hello, Jackson. It's great to see you. Good to see you too. Hey. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Hey. So creative. Oh, it's so great to be with you, even if it's just by Skype, though. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a big honor to be here with you and to have this little chat about what happened during COP21 and a little bit before, during COP21, and what's still happening right now. So first, my name is Eros Sena. I'm 38 years old. I was born in Congo. I'm French and Congolese. I'm a grassroots activist. I grew up in the poor neighborhood in Paris. I'm involved in a movement against police violences and brutalities, discrimination, Blackphobia, against French and European imperialism. And for climate justice. Just before to start to talk about the COP21, I just want to tell you that 4 hours ago I landed. I came back from Tunisia, from the Magdalene Africa, and right now in Tunisia there's a social turmoil. They had a revolution 5 years ago, and they did get rid of a dictator called Ben Ali. Maybe you have heard of him. And it was a tremendous victory for the movement. Yet they're still struggling. The unemployment rate is high. People are going on hunger strike. They're claiming the right to be treated as equal, to have a job, to stand for their dignity. And this have to remind us that you may change or get rid of one man, or even hundreds, but you still have to fight against the system. And you have to get rid of the system of domination of oppression. So the folks over there are fighting, and I wanted to send their thoughts to you and saying that when I told them that I will be speaking with you tonight, they were, oh, tell them that we are with the comrades in Jackson, and we're standing together on this struggle.
Great.
So, what can I say? First, for the COP21, I was involved in the organization preparation of the civil society event around the political space called French Coalition, Climat 21, that gather French organizations and foreign organizations to be prepared for the coalition. This is where and how I met with Kali, who was one of the representatives of the ITEX delegation and TGJ delegation that came many weeks before the COP21, during the COP21. What to say? It was very interesting, the fact that TGJ contingent and Kali came before the COP and just a few days before it started, because they came in two different political moments from France. When they was around, or in October or September, I don't recall. I think it was maybe September. It was before the last terrorist attacks that struck France. That was on November 13th, and at that time we were all kumbaya, everything will be great, there will be a big march and everything, and the world will see what they will see and everything. We kind of literally forget in which system we still are. And the attack that happened on November 15th reminded us this, that no, we are in a certain system, in a certain time of our history, where things collide. And the fact that 130 people died in Paris in one night changed everything almost, or revealed everything. The French government took this as a pretext, as an opportunity to totally switch the narrative and the situation. We were from a moment where it was hard to talk with the French authorities about what we were able to do. We're preparing civil disobedience actions, and for a moment that everything was tagged potential terrorist targets or potential terrorist action. Please, if I'm not clear, because I'm partially French, and sorry for my French, don't hesitate to say it, to repeat myself, and to say something more clearer.
Very clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what happened literally is that the climate justice movement and the social movement that was repressed before the attacks, but weren't that repressed before the attack, prior to the attack, was massively, hugely and with the public consent, more repressed after the attack. As the little space that we wanted to have to express our demands, to give a visibility to our movement towards the streets of Paris, this space totally vanished. In one night, everything disappeared. Even if it is not the same at the same scale, it was in a different context. Even if I don't like this comparison, but in a certain way, it was like what happened in the US after 9/11. There were a prayer and there were an after for the movement. And we are still struggling about that. Many organizations after the attack decided to withdraw, literally to withdraw from the streets, to say, oh, look, there's too much tension, the public opinion will not follow us, we have to withdraw, we have to be in the room at the Le Bourget, where the UN conference was intending to be. No more action in the streets, no more disobedience. So it was hard. Like we were restarting everything from Z to A or from 10 to 0, and it was hard, brothers and sisters. It was like a burden that we didn't think that we would have to carry on, and we're still paying the price of this right now, because we are more scattered than we were before. We are more divided in our tactics than we were before. And we're a little bit like knocked out about how to act, how to react, what to say, how to reorganize, where to start, how to change our narratives. Yet, because despite of this, there were good things. The first thing is that we tend to fight against people that want us to be divided, people or systems that want us to ignore each other, people that want us to just stare at our differences, and they exist. But we didn't stick there. We understood our differences, and there are many between the US and Europe, and the US and France. But yet, there's so many things in common. One of the things in common is that even if it is expressed differently, we face the same system of oppression. In its imperialist way, its colonialist way, its capitalist way. We are the ones who are paying the first toll of the climate change. You guys know it very, very well in Jackson, Mississippi, and where I grew up. It is a poor neighborhood that Kali, Saki, Brandon, Elijah, Vernon, Chai had the opportunity to visit. We face the same thing that you guys face over there. We face the same police brutalities. We face the same discrimination against women through sexism and patriarchy. We face the same discrimination as a strong blackophobic movement in France, and there's a strong and an even stronger Islamophobia journalism in France and in whole Europe. So we saw what can gather us. We saw that what you guys are facing and struggling for is the same thing that we are facing and struggling. And beside what the big Greens or European and French organizations wanted us to do, we did have our own planning. They wanted us just to be protesting about greenhouse gas, protesting about should we talk about 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees? Yes, those things are important. But what are equally important or even more important is how do we do for people from the bottom that can be heard in these issues and build them from the bottom to have a common front. And this is exactly what happened. The intellectual contingents arrived in France, and we had the opportunity to have some actions. We went 20 minutes out of Paris, in the front of a migrant detention center. And there were almost 100 of us. People from Paris and around, people from the e-textile delegation, and of course people from Corporation Jackson. And we had a demonstration in front of it. It was great because there were people from Latin America, there were indigenous people singing and chanting. There were Shay doing something very interesting that I don't recall the name, that was very powerful and spiritual. Sorry, Shay, I kind of lost my memory this last day. I'm getting old, by the way. And what is very more important is that we had the opportunity to have one folk who was detained in that detention center. Somebody from Syria, Afghanistan, I don't, and he was so touched by what we did. There were people in the cell where he was that was crying and that was touched by the fact that people from the US and Canada, from Ecuador, from Peru, from Mozambique, took the time to come over there to protest, to chant, and to remind people that the borders are crossing us, the border are dividing us, and we cannot build a real social front or revolutionary front. Sorry if I use this term of revolutionary front, if we don't take care, if we don't realize that the issue of migration is very important. And maybe you have surely heard of it. Europe is facing its most important wave of migration since the end of World War II. So yeah, this is something very, very important. We also, and especially because this process against migrants in France, their criminalization, their repression, it's also fed by, like I told you, a strong sentiment, a strong narrative around Islamophobia. Today, being a visible Muslim in the streets or in the public space of Europe can be something that can be very dangerous for you. There have been an explosion of 8 crimes against Muslims, like 10 times more 8 crimes since the last attack. And yes, in the French narrative, in the discourse of the politicians, of the so-called intellectuals, now they are like openly Islamophobic. And just to tell you, when I was in Tunisia, I was in Tunisia 2 days ago. It was the time our parliament passed a bill to retrieve French citizenship to anyone who caused a terrorist act. This is the first time in French history that it will be written in our constitution that someone can lose his French citizenship because he did something that is still illegal and not moral, by the way. And what is very important also that for us folks, it was and it's still vital to connect with you, not just through Skype, and I hope that we'll connect with you in Jackson in person, and we're planning to come in Jackson delegation in the end of July, this July till the beginning of August, because for us it's vital to learn from you and to learn from each other. You have developed tactics and strategy. You have faced some victories. You have won some battles. You have lost others, and all this for us is very important to learn from you. And we have also ways and tactics and knowledge that we want to share, because we do think that we have to build a global movement, stronger, more vivid, and that doesn't stop at a Facebook account or a Twitter feed. Just to finish, one of my mentors said to me, "Hey, Eros, 40 years ago, I had more comrades all over the world without Facebook that you have." And when you say comrades, it's a comrade that could helped me. I could go and knock at the door in any country, and I knew that someone who helped me, not just to host me, but also to help me in my struggle. Literally, you guys, you don't have this, and it's true. We should strengthen our connections. We should strengthen our movement. We should also be more human. Coming to see you, to talk to you about politics is one thing. Coming to see you and to share a meal, to share a beer for those who drink beers, to laugh, to laugh together, to share jokes, something that we really need, because we have to put human first. So that's the thing that I have in mind to tell you at 2 a.m. in Paris. So if you guys have some questions, I'm willing to answer. And yes, I have to ask you to apologize. 2 of my comrades who were supposed to be talking with me tonight. One is my brother in arms, he's called Manon, and he's a very great activist and photojournalist, because I am also a photojournalist. But he couldn't be there tonight because he is in another part of France with some comrades from Palestine. And there's another comrade called Fatima, and she has some training exams. I was about to say school exam, but she's not in school anymore. Training exam, professional training exam, so she couldn't do it tonight. So I want you guys to, I want to present to say sorry for them. Sorry. So yeah, if there's any questions, any comments, anything, guys, I'm all yours.
You don't have any questions?
Thank you, Eros. So we're just gonna ask if anyone has a question, if you could come up to the mic, because we're still doing a live stream. So folks out there will want to see you. I'll turn the screen so Eros can see you as well.
And the question, so we wanted to be able to have an open discussion, and we definitely want to make sure that we end with next steps, because I think there are some concrete things that you can hear from us in terms of Jack's transition plan, from Richard and Sanchioni, and then we have Brandon, who can give us an update in terms of the Clean Power Plan and the Clean Energy Coalition. So there's a lot of things that we and struggles that we have moving forward. So we want to end with next steps. But for now, we want to open the floor, and if you have questions for any of us who went, or any questions for Eros, yeah, you can hop on up.
Or comments, reflections.
Comments, yeah, comments, reflections, thoughts, ideas. And so if you can introduce yourself, that'd be great.
My name is Pearl Ricks, and I came here from New Orleans this evening just for this. And my question is, okay, so here it seems like there's been a wave of communities that are not necessarily in peril, but communities that aren't the top to be served, coming together and creating spaces where they can feed each other and they can help each other to produce. Is that something that is also happening where you are? Is it something that's more global than I understand, and just because I'm here, I'm not really seeing it? What is going on in your community in terms of sustainability and producing food and getting everyone on that wave to support each other before handling bigger problems?
That was for Eros.
Yeah. Eros, did you want to take that?
Yeah. Well, if I get you right, we're asking a question about self-food productions within the communities in France, right? And especially within, of course, poor or popular working class communities. This is a big issue. This is a very big issue for us. In France, we have this iconic guy that I don't think you have heard of. He's a French white male, a friend, by the way, is called José Bouvet, and like 12 years ago, he took down a McDonald's. There were McDonald's that was about to be built in the south of France, and he took it down, saying that we should get rid of junk food and we should ask for our food sovereignty. But this was something that he talked about for people that have a certain level of income, that live in a certain communities, and most of them are not don't descend from migrants or are not black or Arabs. The fact is, as a child of the concrete, because I work in a project, and my parents live in the projects. Most of my friends live in the projects. We are those who are facing the most important issue about food, and it's hard to say that we have to regain our food sovereignty, and it starts by ourselves in our communities. So there are some experiments. They are very tiny little experiments. They are starting to grow around Paris, in other places of France. But I have to be honest, it's hard because people trying to think that the best meal we can have is the one that have been conditioned, put in a box, frozen, irradiated by someone that you've never seen. And it's hard to tell them that they can manage to have the time to grow their own food or to buy it from someone that they know. And so we're trying to do this. And one way of doing this is to recall on the forgotten working class traditions, because in France, from the end of the 19th century till the mid of the 20th century, they were what we call the working class garden, places within the urban community where people had some piece of land where they were growing tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, and so on. And around the 60s and the 70s, this all fed away. So we started to recall that memory, literally to go in those places, to reopen them, and to say, oh, see, there's a place there. You should put some seed and grow something. But yet, and I will end with this last point, we have a big issue because the public space is now a sport of high tension, because we have a huge process of gentrifications, and every land that could be used to have urban agriculture or is now a prey for those who have economics project to literally import rich people in poor community. So it's cultural, it's political, and it's also about money. And so all this put together, it's hard. Literally, it's hard. Yeah, but we're doing this, and this is also why we want to come to Jackson to learn from you guys, because we heard that you have started some, and we want to look around about how did you do it? How did you reach out people to start thinking and talking and acting on those issues?
Oh, thanks. More questions? Comments? Reflections?
Any questions for us or for Richard?
My question is more generally for y'all who went. But what do you feel like are the sort of material skills that you picked up while you were in Paris? The way that you saw people organizing and communicating with each other that you feel like would be applicable to the kind of organizing you're doing here? Yeah.
So my answer to that question, so the skills that I learned, first of all, I've never been in like in a big action. Like I did I was in a few 515 actions, but to actually organize and actually lead chants and be in spaces where we actually, got together and actually planned out an action, that was all new for me. So I mean, like the like doing the whole logistics and mass media spread, like that was, I gained a lot of skills.
Yeah. For me, I feel like the skills that I enhanced while being out in Paris was my strategic communication skills. We learned a lot from the Indigenous Environmental Network. They have a team that's just like, they put out material just like super quick, and it's really clean, really fresh, it's edited, and it's like, and like with our team, we got a team and we got kids, it's childcare, it's like a bunch of stuff happening. And, we, I feel like Saki and I and like just our team did a really good job of making sure that we were able to put out our material as fast as we could. It wasn't as quick as IEN, but it was pretty damn quick. And so that meant we were staying up, late, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, uploading videos, uploading content, uploading interviews and stuff that happened, just to get the word out. Folks have donated money, for us to be there. And we wanted to show that like we're not just slouching, we're not just visiting the Alpha Tower or the Louvre. While we're there, we're also telling people about climate justice. While we're there, we're telling people about the false solutions of the COP. And so, yeah, for me, it was like thinking on your toes. Like when I do interviews and stuff, I like to be prepared and like have my talking points and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of folks that will like come to you. And like, so you had to be ready. And even if you weren't ready, you had to make yourself ready. And I think all of us kind of had that kind of crash course in the communications 101, or crash course into, doing interviews, conducting interviews, but also being interviewed. And I also think that can help tremendously in terms of us pushing our communications here locally. And so yeah, we brought that back, to here, to Jackson.
Yeah.
Question for Richard Sanchez.
So I just wanted to add one thing, which was, and it wasn't a skill that was necessarily learned from other people while we were there, but I think that we definitely went through a process of living together and working together for like 2 straight weeks. Like we literally, it was 8 of us. Actually, it was 10 of us. Right, because the children are able to. So there were 10 of us, and hostel. The room was great, but we were all in the same room, basically. It was like bunk beds, yeah. So, but I think that, and for me, I think that I saw, like it was a team building experience, and I think that by the end, so for example, there was an action that was particularly It Takes Roots action. And we got separated. We had come up with like, okay, we're moving this way. But because of how adjusting to Paris was, and how when you're trying to get from A to B with like 10 people, how that can work, and you're in a country where you don't speak the language and you just learning the transit system. So that was a challenge, but at the point where it was this action and we needed to kind of move in a certain way, like I was really proud of of us and some of the security training that we were able to implement. And so yeah, so I think that was like being able, like a testing ground for being able to interact with each other in the way that we're trying to do and be here, and also and like direct actions and communication and security. So I thought that was great. Noel, can you come up to ask your question? You sure?
I'll ask the question.
Okay, I can repeat it if you.
So the question is for Richard and Sanchioni, in the framework of system change, right? How do you guys see UAW at the local level partnering with Cooperation Jackson, or in general being a part of moving the Jackson Just Transition Plan forward? That's the question. Can you repeat that?
So let me see if I can repeat the question. So the question is the roll up and how does the UAW, I've been doing that all day, the United Auto Workers UAW contribute to a transition plan and a just transition plan? And I think like it would be interesting to hear what you think a just transition plan is, and then and how that works in partnership with people like Cooperation Jackson, us, and whoever else. Is that the full question? Okay.
Yeah, we're live streaming, so we want to make sure everybody can see your face
And hear your voice.
and hear your voice.
So I think the mistake unions make is thinking that you can organize a multinational corporation isolated or separate from the community. That the greatest point of leverage actually isn't in France or Brazil, where we do a lot of activity, but it's actually the local community. Nissan doesn't want to be isolated. It should be isolated as a company that has come here, taken $1.4 billion of taxpayer money, and then is intimidating the workers out of trying to organize. All we want is a fair election of the workers, yes or no. So I think you can't do this in isolation of the community. And I think to be, frankly, we told, I don't think the labor movement, we can't be progressive if we're not helping the community as well, like Cooperation Jackson. We want to know if we can do to help as well. You're not a progressive, that's been debated a lot on TV these days with Sanders, but you're not a progressive trade unionist if you don't care about the environment. And I don't think you're a progressive environmentalist if you don't, or a climate justice person if you don't care about unions. Which is a conversation I had with some people briefly with Greenpeace, because they pulled out of the endorsement of our activity because we know this side only gives them money in France. So, but I think we've got to be integrated well with the community. We should think about how to expand the relationship. Ali has been a strong supporter of ours, and the late mayor was our hero, and we lost our best supporter.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
And it's me again. I just had a question about, well, you guys mentioned having your lawyer with you and how that is the person who figured out that you needed to stop leafletting and dispersing information to people. So how, I guess, what advice would any of you have to anyone who's looking to leave the country and do any sort of action or have any sort of physical role in helping? How do you navigate the legal realm of other countries? How do you make sure you kind of cross your T's and dot your I's before you get over there? That's my question.
Lawyers shouldn't set the strategy. That was the law, but well, just for our case, our fight was with not the French government, the French police. Our fight was with Renault Nissan, and not the workers, but with the CEO particularly. So we weren't really looking to have a confrontation. We wanted to be respectful of what was going on there. That really wasn't our situation. So ultimately, we did push an envelope, but ultimately when they said we couldn't do it, so we didn't really have a choice. It's just not that you pick your battles, and that wasn't good.
I have a question, which is a question in order to tease out a little bit more what came out of COP and what came out of the process and how that impacts us, so that we could be concrete about that. And I wanted to pose it to Eros so that he could talk a little bit about that. And I think I want to piggyback. I'm already planning on piggybacking off of that so that we can start moving back into the local, and what's next and how it impacts us. What does that mean? How are we intersecting this with all of the other struggles that we've been talking about, particularly workers' rights and developing and building worker cooperatives and a solidarity economy, and economic democracy. So Eros, can you maybe talk briefly about concrete things that came out of the negotiation process itself in terms of the text that came out, and how that impacts frontline communities and what that means we need to be doing? Did you hear us?
Yeah, I thought you were about to speak first. No.
No.
Sorry, yeah.
No,
So,
if you can speak first, then I'll just add a local context.
About the text itself, how can I say? This text is like a bitter victory or a sweet defeat. In a way that they managed to mention the 1.5 limit that was very strong and hard demand from the frontline communities from the Pacific Islands that are right now facing extinction, literally, of the culture, the submerging, is it the English word? Submerging of the land. So for them, the 2 degrees that we were supposed not to reach was like a death sentence. So after long nights of discussion and negotiation, finally the mention of 1.5 as the most important limit to reach is mentioned. Yet the way to reach the way to not reach it are not clearly settled. The supposed exit from the fossil fuel has been pushed away from what were asked by the scientists, and this thanks to the pressure of of countries that were led by Saudi Arabia. So at the end, in one hand, we have the 1.5 limit that is clearly written, and the other hand, we have the means and the means and that are not clear about how do we get rid of the fossil fuel industry and its lethal consequences for the frontline communities around the world. In the same time, other parts of the frontline communities are gathered around within African countries. There, the issue is about how do you finance transitioning from certain kind of carbon-based economy and access and the right for many people, millions of people in Africa to get access to energy. And how do you finance this transition from this to a less carbon economy with the guarantee that you will give a clean mother access to energy, or somebody in Chad or Congo access to economy. So this means we're thinking international law around patterns and financing this transition. So there's supposed to be 100 billions of euros of fund that should help global South countries in general, African countries in particular, to transition from this economy to another one. Again, there's no clear commitment from how long the money will come, because they will need this money regularly, this amount regularly. And especially, and this is the case about what do we stand for, will this money go back in a certain way, will this money go back in a certain way in the pocket of the big Western companies, or will it go directly in the benefit of the people in the global South? Or another way of saying this, will this money be a way for capitalism to greenwash itself and just to mutilate it, than to really change the system? There are other issues around the text that are very terrible, because they should have a clause to call back the parties to rewrite the agreement. The clauses around this are not mandatory. So there will be a new meeting in 5 years, but this meeting will not be a meeting to review the agreement, even if the current consequences and current course will obviously lead us above the 1.5 and more above 3 degrees. Was I clear? Because I'm not sure myself I was clear, so.
Say it again.
Was it clear?
Can you say the last part?
Oh, say just that last part again.
There are clauses to call for the reviewing of the arguments that are not mandatory. There will be another big meeting of the parties in 5 years, but that meeting will not be a conference of parties with the capacity to review the agreements, even if in 5 years all numbers will show at that moment that we will be on the course of going over the 1.5 and maybe reaching the 3 degrees.
I can expand on that a little bit, Eros, because usually within the United Nations process, when they've gone through this process where they've developed a convention or a treaty or agreement, there's always a review process. And so I think what Eros is saying is that in 5 years, there's a plan for a gathering for it to be a review process, but the review process itself sounds like it'll be a lot different than other review processes where they're supposed to come and say, we made this commitment at this point, this is how we're getting to it, this is how far we are falling short, and this is what we're gonna do about it. And then usually in that process, civil society has an opportunity to say, this is what's going on, this is how we see it, yes, they're meaning it, no, they're not, they're full of it. And so even though they have a plan for a review, it doesn't sound like it's a concrete review at all. And the key and the numbers that Eros was talking about, and even the number that you see behind you on this banner that we made while we were there, is that there was a lot of conversations around what is that limit? Like how hot can it get in Celsius before, you know, we really reach that tipping point? And so, you know, 3, I think while we were there, it was like around 2, and right now we're already at 1 degree Celsius, right, in terms of the increase of the warmth, the heat. And so for us, and learning our analysis and being there, we created this Africa Demands 1.5 to stay alive, because we realized that 2 is too high. We're at 1. Like, the system and what came out of the COP is not saying, basically, we need to shut it down. Like, in order to not have it raised, we need to shut it down. And what it's doing instead is like, countries have pledges, they're not actually commitments, it's not even necessarily binding. And so I think what that means for, it means different things in different parts of the world, because for the global South, the struggle through this whole process was the North that is responsible for extracting from us and creating this climate crisis is actually created a debt that needs to be due, and we framed it as reparations for the global South. And so, you know, the issues and negotiations around whether or not they would pay money and how much the, I can't remember what the fund is called, is gonna be, and if they would really commit to giving those dollars, I think it's some of what you were also talking about, right, Eros? And so to take that from there, for us, we understand, I think we can understand, and we put it into our context, that it's about resources, right? And it's about whether it's about continuing the practice because it provides those who are benefiting the most from it with the resources. And even when they say we're gonna do things to address this, the question of how resources get distributed and what resources get put into communities that are on the front lines, that are facing asthma, like we have high rates here and in different poor and working class communities. So I wanted to also, because I'm being mindful of the time, it's a little bit after 8 for us, and what is it, like 3 going on? Is it 4 or 3?
It's 3 in Paris.
3 in Paris right now. To kind of bring things to a close and wrap it up and talk about local in terms of the United States and then local in terms of Jackson. I'm gonna ask Brandon in a few minutes to come up and just be here with me as we talk about next steps. And one of, I think, the crucial next steps that is related is that for the United States, one of the ways that the Obama administration and the EPA has decided that it would address climate change and try to talk about reducing carbon emissions is this clean power plan, which addresses power plants, right? And so one, we know that only addressing the power plants is not enough. And in the way that the Clean Power Plan has been drafted, leaves a lot of loopholes. And we actually, through the Climate Justice Alliance that we talked about earlier, had a day of action where all over the US we delivered our power plan, which really challenges the Clean Power Plan, but holds it accountable, but also says what parts of it are most useful for our communities that we need to make sure happen. And so coming out of COP and what agreements are made, the United States is, this is one example of what the United States is saying, how it's going to meet the goals and the agreements in Paris. And so the Clean Power Plan went through the process of people, civil society, giving comments. The last, I think it was 2 more days before that process was gonna close, when Brandon, Andrew, Elijah, and Sean went to Atlanta, the Southeast Regional EPA headquarters that we're included in, to deliver this Our Power Plan, which was a part of the response that they were allowing from the community. But now we're dealing with the implementation part, right? And so Mississippi is supposed to be implementing this Clean Power Plan. And I'll hand it over to Brandon because him and some of the other folks like Andrew and Elijah and Shay have been engaging in an emerging coalition, which is the Mississippi Clean Energy Coalition, that's trying to look at Mississippi's implementation, even push Mississippi to do some kind of implementation. So Eros, we definitely don't want to hold you. If you want to be a part of the conversation, that's great, because we're going to move from here into next steps. But so I'm going to take just a second to say thank you so much. Yeah. And we're really hoping, and let us know what we can do here to support you all actually making it to the US, because the idea is that they come to Jackson on the way to Canada, where the World Social Forum is going to be. And so we're going to do everything we can to support y'all getting here.
I wanted to thank you a lot. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'm looking forward to meet with you guys. And thank you very much and enjoy. And again, Brandon, Shay, Saki, Vernon, Kali, the kids, everyone was great in Paris. And we learned a lot from them, and we're looking forward to learn more from you. So thank you guys, merci beaucoup, and I'll go to sleep.
Bonne nuit, bonne nuit. Before it's cut off, tell him that the national.
I can
What
chat
is
it.
that?
Go ahead.
You
Nick.
can chat, she can chat.
Well, never mind.
We could chat it.
I'll chat it when you say it now.
The National Convention, the Presidential Nominating Convention of the Green Party of the United States is August 4 to 7 in Houston. So if he's going to be in the South in that time period, I will take it upon myself to invite them to please come. And if you would give them the time frame so they can think about it. Probably the earlier 4th, 5th, 6th would be the best time to come.
So I just chatted that real quick, and I'll just say, like, let's talk, because if you can give us more information, then we can have like an email communication. And I mean, it's interesting because the Green Party candidate was in Paris for all of this, and so. Yeah.
Officially, there are 5. But most
Oh, well, sorry, I said D because I have a bias. Or
Cool.
Joe style.
Cool. So yeah. So what's happening here locally with the Clean Power Plan? Yeah. So Phil Bryant. Yeah. So everybody knows coming. Like, you know, they put out. They actually sued the federal government for trying to make them implement the Clean Power Plan, right?
Yes.
And so we had meetings with the folks from the Department of Environmental Quality from Mississippi, and they basically told us they're gonna try to do the bare minimum. We just found out yesterday that the Supreme Court actually blocked the Clean Power Plan, right? So this is kind of where things are at. One thing that I think is kind of, it offers an opportunity in all of this is that the folks from the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, they set up a meeting for the 23rd of February for us to have like a public hearing where they bring folks in the community and community folks say stuff, and then they go back and do whatever they were gonna do in the first place. They're gonna set that up, right? But it actually allows us space to have more time. If this stuff is blocked up in litigation, you know, it gives us more time to mobilize and organize our people to make sure that we have the people in the space who need to be in the space, and those are folks who are most directly affected by climate change. Talking about how the state is going to implement the Clean Power Plan. There are some things in the Clean Power Plan called Clean Energy Incentive Program. So basically, it's like if you have a clean energy business or a company or something, like hopefully we'll have like solar or something popping here. The federal government can allocate resources to make sure that your plan gets off the ground. You know, but just to be clear, the main thing that they're focusing on within the Clean Power Plan is actually about carbon trading. This allows the power plants to just continue to pollute, but what they'll do is sell their carbon emissions to like another place that has less emissions or whatnot, and they can just continue to do it, right? So they're creating another market. It still negatively affects, you know, communities who have been affected by climate change. You know, they're basically doing the same thing, but like just trying to mask it and like, okay, we're cool now because we got this clean carbon over here. It's bizarre, right? That's the system, right? So yeah, so our thing is we want to work with folks, anyone here that is down for trying to get down and throw down, and, you know, with or against or for our people. Throw down for our people, just about like clean energy and like trying to push that sustainability. So if anyone is down to get down with that, holler at me, holler at Andrew, Raja, Sheye, Saki.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so part of me, I've been trying to get the footage that's been recorded this evening so far onto the computer so we can free up space on the card, just in case the one that we have going right now runs out. But I'm glad that we're streaming this also, and so we're hoping that folks can share the recording that'll be on YouTube after this with people so they can learn more about it. So Brandon just talked about a concrete step in terms of one, joining the coalition or making sure that you're in touch with us for when there are going to be actions to hold Mississippi accountable and really push for the ways that the Clean Power Plan can be supporting our initiatives with resources, right? Because part of the Jackson Just Transition Plan that I talked about earlier, and that I want to take a minute on now, is about being able to create alternative energy like solar, and I'm going to say electric cars for Richard over there. My computer. Okay, so what the Just Transition Plan is now is a working draft. And I have some here. Brandon, if you can help me pass them out. I mean, it's going to be hard for you to comment on it, right, if you haven't seen it. But what we want to see happen is for there to be a live discussion and a process for developing the plan further. And so, as an individual, we'd love for you to look at it, give us feedback. The contact information is on back. But we also want to make sure that we're meeting with local organizations, unions, and churches and other civil society forces to discuss this plan in order to get collective community input and really use it as an opportunity to expand the number of people who know and care about and want to get involved and be committed to this kind of transition, and ultimately even expand it beyond what we've thought of so far. And so that for us, that's the next concrete plan. And part of that is building the institutions that we need in order to execute the plan. And so we talked about a couple of examples of the cooperatives that are already getting off the ground, like the cafe, the farm. I failed to mention arts and culture, but that's one of the other cooperatives that has been working on being able to transition from a working group to a cooperative. And the composting waste management there's been some ebbs and flows in that, but that's still very much one of the cooperatives that we're hoping can be first in this round of a network of cooperatives. But we need institutions in order to make the things that are in the plan realized. But we also need a committee. We haven't even discussed it yet. We can talk here today, like what is it in terms of the policy reform part that we need? So in my mind, the way that we've helped develop and are a part of the Jackson Human Rights Initiative, there is some kind of body that needs to be able to take on the policy reform aspects that are in the plan. Actually, one of them, because I can maybe give an example and be concrete. And so, Richard, like you were saying, how can we support? It's like thinking through what this really looks like. What do we need in terms of policy that supports a transition plan in terms of worker ownership and higher wages, or whatever the gamut and ranges of that are, but really being able to think about it on the levels of the areas that organizations are already working and how we connect those things. And so for the policy, we want to see zero emissions, a zero emissions program and a zero waste. If we could push for Jackson to be, this would be huge, and it would be a model that we could set by 2025 if we were a zero waste city. And a zero waste city that is able to do that through the worker cooperatives or whatever other democratically worker managed enterprise it is, because there's different, we can talk another time about the different levels and different other cooperative models outside of the ones that we're working on now, but to have the link between Jackson being able to become this sustainable city through the use of community, democratic, participatory processes. So yeah, so I definitely want you to flip through it. The first part of it really outlines what some of the problems are, and these may not even be all of the problems, and there may be issues that are happening in pockets of communities that we want to definitely make sure gets represented in here. You know, a lot of us know, I think we all know about water and the issues that we have here, but there are a lot of other things that are going on. And to be able to engage with the communities, with the brownfields that are like there and saying and including in this document what their demands are and how they see their communities being improved. And so it goes from the problem into what we're saying is a contribution that we can make towards a solution. Not that it is the solution, but it's our contribution towards a solution with building the Eco Village and the Just Transition Policy Reform. So we definitely need people to come together and talk about the process of engagement. How are we going to get out into the communities? If you have an organization and you're willing to set up a time and a meeting for us to get together and look at and talk through this. If you have a church and you want the church to be involved or even just to know about what it is and have people think about what they want to see happen. And I think, so it's multi-pronged because I think, you know, there are the policy part isn't everybody's forte and isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's important, and we're recognizing that both the policy part is important and the creation of what it is that we want through these alternatives is important. And I feel like a lot of times we, personally for Cooperation Jackson, we're really heavily weighted on that we're creating these alternatives, but we also understand that we're in the context of the state, and unless we have policy that's going to support the alternatives that we create, you kind of setting yourself up, right? So
Yeah.
the last, Brandon, you want to add something? The last point that I was gonna say is that the next step is also making sure that the fight for the airport and the next mayoral campaign is also a key point, and that they're, you know, recognizing what the intersections are. So, you know, we have flyers for folks to come out to the People's Assembly. That's going to be addressing the airport takeover. And I would like at this assembly to actually put forth the Mississippi Clean Energy Coalition's fight and struggle around the Clean Power Plan within Mississippi, because Mississippi has like what, 26 coal power plants. And so it's real here, and how the health, the well-being, and the resources of a community throughout the states are being impacted is something that I think we need to, you know, potentially have a People's Assembly around. And so we're hoping that you can come out to that. We have these up here. And like I mentioned, the Jackson Human Rights Initiative is live and strong. And I have flyers here for people to be able to find out more about it and even potentially come engage. Because really what we've been talking about all this time, even though it's meant to focus on climate change and what happened in Paris, is about human rights. And so another announcement plug. Do you want to?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, the only thing I wanted to say was that the things that we're trying to do with the Just Transition Plan, some of the mechanisms for us to implement that are already in place in Jackson, right? We got this here, you know, folks have built, you know, to form citywide people's assemblies, you know, and so it's just about using the existing structures that we have and infusing it with our politics, but also with our issues, and trying to make sure that it's a people-centered process where like folks from the community, folks who are directly affected, are involved in the decision-making and actually feel like, you know, their decisions, their opinion has value, and that is what we move forward with, you know, in terms of like having people feel good about the process. And so yeah, we're working on it. It's not like you know, we don't have it like mastered or anything, you know, but it's a work in progress, and we're building it.
Yeah, and we can't build it with only a small amount of people, right? History of movements have taught us that. So Jen, before I turn the mic over to you, I want to say that I'm going to do an official kind of closeout, but we do want to allow for announcements because we have some announcements and there may be other announcements in the room. Did you want to?
I was just gonna mention that I don't seem to have the date with me, but the mayor's supposed to be having a series of, I don't know if they're calling them town hall, I mean, community meetings in large places. And it would be good to have people go and ask questions in front of everybody who's there to the mayor about one thing and another. They're also, every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, there's a community-oriented policing and administration meeting in one of the 4 police precincts in the city. 1, 2, 3, 4 is to the Thursdays. And that's another place to bring things up to people who are concerned about their community. So, and in conjunction with, especially with those COPs meetings, not to be confused with this big COP climate thing, but those are called COPs meetings on Thursdays at 6 o'clock. It would probably be good to have a one-page summary flyer that would be introductory to people who haven't heard this before with contact information, but summarizing the most important, most broadly applicable points probably, and some things to follow up on, join, come to or something.
So Jen, can you say one more time, because Shay is gonna write that down so we have it available for ourselves and thinking about how to bring the issues to those spaces.
So the mayor speaks once a week,
Right, once a week, what day?
Thursday.
Well, no, Thursday. Now, there is a TV show, is that what you're talking about? But I know I heard, but I counted it, some kind of, I think, series of public meetings in different parts of the city. And
Okay.
I'll send you the dates if I see it, if I get them in an email.
Okay, we can look into it too, like a series of meetings coming up from the mayor that we definitely want to have a presence.
And then regularly, anyway, are these Thursdays at 6 o'clock in the precincts, the 4 police precincts, which are the 4 parts of the city. And, and I'm sorry, and then the other thing I meant to mention is that, of course, there are dozens of neighborhood associations that meet on various days and times, usually once a month. And so we could work up toward attending some of those and passing out a one-page flyer.
Yeah, my goal was to actually jot up some of this on the computer, and I didn't do the charting since we were going to be using technology, but I think that might take up some time. So Shay, if you don't mind taking some notes, that definitely is on the agenda in terms of the next steps of the engagement and developing the plan, being at all the different spaces and places like associations and churches. But I'm glad that you mentioned that. It's always good to remind us that there are a lot of places and spaces and institutions that exist that we can make sure we're tapping into. So we mentioned the People's Assembly, February 20th. Shay is going to say an announcement because Mira, the Factor 15, and a lot of other folks have some gatherings, events, actions coming up in the 20th and the 24th.
Okay, so Mira is having a Human Rights Lobby Day on the 24th. So we're asking those who are available to come out and help support. It starts at 11 at the mayor office. They're located on 612 North State Street, right there on the corner of State and High Street. And then on the 20th, they're having an action at the Village, and we're asking for people to come out and help support. They're going to be trying to get people, particularly in that apartment complex, they're trying to get those folks to promote, I'm sorry, brain fart, trying to promote people to register to vote. So we're trying to push that, and we're asking for people to come out and help support that as well. And then on the 20th, we're having a members meeting
Oh, yeah,
as well.
So it's on a members meeting, and a lot of these things, if you go to everything, it would be your full Saturday, and I think it's probably in the morning with it's Saturday, but I'm gonna plug, it's only for an hour. Our open house is on Saturday the 20th. And so it's an opportunity for those of you who may just be getting introduced to us or have heard, but you haven't gotten a chance to really hear what it is that we're doing outside of this program or a small program that you've been to. And then for everyone else who knows and who remembers and who come and support and our allies, to tell people to come to, because the open house is going to include a tour of the center, the farm, talk about the Cooperation Jackson's mission, vision, and goals, how to become engaged, how to become a member, and how people can really plug in to what's going on here at the Lumumba Center in terms of arts and culture and events and our monthly film screenings that we're doing as a part of the International Decade for People of African Descent. And so the open house is the third Saturday of every month. And for people who are members, we also have membership meetings twice a month. And as a reminder, the first one is this Thursday for the members who are in the room. Right, that's tomorrow. So to close out, and we'll make sure that we have pictures up on the website already, but we'll make sure that we add a lot more. And we still have resources, like Brandon was saying. We worked really hard while we were there to make sure that everyone here knew what was going on. And so we have a page on our website that that has photos, it has videos. We were trying to write reflections as well. And there's also information on what a just transition framework is and resources that we're going to be continuing to have, because that could be a place where we can continue to learn about the implications of the negotiations, the document that's come out of it, and just climate change and climate justice, I think. So we're kind of going to be redeveloping the current initiative section, and this will remain on there. And we also do have a calendar on here. The Facebook is a great way to find out not only what we're doing, but all the different coalitions that we're a part of. Like Shay is talking about Mira and the Fact 15, and Brandon's talking about the Clean Energy Coalition. So it's a way to get plugged in with us and plugged in with our allies. We have little goodie stickers that we had in Paris. And it's It Takes Roots to Weather the Storm delegation, and a beautiful image. And one of the things that Eros made me think of when he was speaking was our call for systems change, not climate change, and that really the policies and things that are coming out of political leadership and corporate leadership are not about systems change. It's about addressing, whether it's with Band-Aids or creating loopholes to be and do whatever to dig, burn, dump that they still want to do. But what we're talking about is the change of the actual system. And so to end, and I really want to thank all of you for coming in, taking the time to be here, especially folks who have been following along the way before we went. And we're glad that you were able to come back and hear from us more. Definitely check out the website because there are written reflections and everything. But one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Bullard, and Richard had a photo of Dr. Bullard up there, and he's a long time climate justice, environmental justice activist and scholar, and his, you know, a part of the history that we know that we actually are building on top of. Not that this is a new movement now, but folks have been talking about environmental racism for a long time. When we showed one of the films, he had this quote, and we've been using this quote, so I'm gonna end with this quote. There's no Hispanic air, no African American air, or white air. There's just air. And if you breathe air, and most people I know do breathe air, then that makes you part of the environment. And if you were concerned about the quality of that air, I would consider you an environmentalist. And if you drink water, and most people I know drink water, then you are concerned about what's in the water, then I would consider you an environmentalist. And you eat food, and again, most people I know eat food, and you're concerned about what's in the food, then I would consider you an environmentalist. If you answer 2 of those 3, water, food, air, that was my part, then I would say you are an environmentalist and you just don't know it yet. You might not know it, but that's the definition of what an environmentalist is, and it really encompasses all of us and all of our concerns. And so, again, we invite you to continue in the fight and the struggle for changing things, but also creating and developing the world we want to see. Thank you.